Stabilization Wedge Game Board by Kenny Stillwell and Brittany. Our first wedge is conservation transport. You would reduce use of vehicles by decreasing car travel of 2 billion 30-mile-per-hour cars from 10,000 to 5,000 miles. You would do this by encouraging public transportation because it will lessen emissions, and you could put a tax on the people who travel more than X miles a month or year. Our second wedge is efficient buildings. You would do this by cutting carbon emissions by 1/4 in buildings and applications. You use energy-efficient cooling, heating, water heating, lighting, and refrigeration. Half of the potential savings are in the buildings in developing countries. Our third wedge is efficient electricity. You would do this by doing efficient coal plants. You would raise the efficiency of coal power plants to 60%. You would reduce 1/4 of all carbon emissions by using the Rankine cycle, where working fluid changes from liquid to vapor and back during the cycle. Plants with reheat cycles can go from 32% efficiency to 47%, and when it is combined with other cycle plants, it can reach 60%. Our fourth wedge is nuclear electricity. You would do this by replacing 700 gigawatts of coal-fired plants with nuclear power. By replacing 700 gigawatts of efficient coal-fired plants with a carbon-neutral form of power, this would save us from burning 1 gigaton of carbon per year. This requires 700 gigawatts of nuclear power running at 90% capacity. That would mean doubling the world production of nuclear power. Our fifth wedge is wind electricity. You would do this by replacing 700 gigawatts of coal-fired plants by 2,000 gigawatts of peak wind power. You would need 2,000 gigawatts of wind power to save 1 gigaton of carbon emissions. You need to multiply the world production of wind power by a factor of 50. This would occupy about 30 million hectares, some on land and some off land. Since windmills are widely spaced, the land can have multiple uses. Our sixth and seventh wedge is forest storage. You would stop deforestation and start reforestation. To stop half a gigaton of carbon emissions per year, you would completely stop cutting the tropical forest. You would also save another half gigaton of emissions by planting 250 million hectares of new forest in the tropics. To prevent another half gigaton of carbon emissions, you would establish 300 million hectares of plantations on non-forested land. Our eighth wedge is soil storage. This is soil management. Tilling causes soil carbon to be converted into CO2. No-tilling farming can reduce emissions and stop erosion. If good agricultural practices can be done in all 16 million hectares of cropland, 1.5 gigatons of carbon can be stored a year. Verification programs that enforce good agricultural practices may also help. Implications of taxpayers. The people would have to conserve their house size and pay more for efficient energy applications. They will get taxed for going over a certain amount of miles a year and will have to use public transportation. They will have to accept nuclear energy and allow wind turbines to be built around the world. The land can also be used for agriculture. They should also stop the deforestation and push for good agricultural practices. Implications of energy companies. Conservation transport would affect the employees of companies because their employees would have to live closer. They would like efficient buildings and electricity because they would get more out of what they are paying for. Nuclear electricity and wind electricity would make them happy because they would have a much larger electricity capacity. They would not be affected largely by soil or forest storage. Implications of environmental groups. They may not like conservation transport if they travel to talk about their goals for the environment, but would be happy most people are driving less. They would like efficient buildings and efficient electricity because there would be less coal burned and less emissions. They may not like nuclear electricity, though, because they would be worried about the nuclear waste. They would, however, like wind electricity. They would also like the forest and soil storage because it would keep the forest and farms. Implications of manufacturers. Manufacturers would like efficient buildings because they can build new houses and appliances. They would not like the reduction of cars because people will buy less cars and use public transportation. They would like making coal plants more efficient because it would create jobs. Manufacturers would like nuclear power plants because they have to create more plants. They would like wind electricity because they have to build windmills. Deforestation and soil management would not affect them. Implications of industrialized country governments. They would not like efficient buildings because they would have to remodel houses. They would like the reduction of vehicles because it would mean less money to making cars. They would not like efficient power plants, wind electricity, or nuclear power plants because they would have to pay for all of them. They would also not like the public sphere for nuclear power plants. They wouldn't mind soil management because all they would have to do is enforce more regulations. The government would not like deforestation because they would not have to pay for more trees to be planted and they couldn't build more property. Implications of developing country governments. All in all, they would benefit from all of these processes because it would be bettering their countries, especially efficient building and efficient electricity. What we learned. All in all, we learned different ways to stop emissions and to better nuclear energy, efficient electricity, efficient buildings, conservation transport, wind electricity, forest storage, and soil storage. We will work step by step to better the world and cut back emissions.